welcome everyone. This is the information session for those of you who are history majors and planning on writing a thesis. Can I just see a show of hands, the number of people who are juniors going to be seniors next year? Any sophomores? Thank you for coming, sophomores, as well. That's great. It's never too early to get a sense of what the senior thesis is about. I'm Drew Littman. I teach early American history here. And this is, you want to introduce yourself, Joel? If you're not in the light.
Okay. Joel K. And I teach medieval history here.
And we're just going to update you a little bit on sort of what to expect for the process, answer general questions, and you're going to hear from a couple students who are currently writing their theses as well. Yeah, do you think maybe we should begin with that, as not to waste time? We have with me Adele Stolowitz and Janae Park, who are both working on theses in American history. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind, just give you each just a couple minutes to talk a little bit about how you chose your topic, how you found it, and then sort of what you've learned through the process of doing it and writing a thesis right now, if you don't mind. Adele, if you don't mind starting, since you're right here.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Adele Stolowitz. I started, and this is actually a piece of advice that I wanted to share, started looking for ideas for what to write about when doing research in my previous years here. So that's how I ended up finding a topic that I was really interested in. I found it simply in another secondary source that I read. It was one sentence, and I was like, cool, that sounds great. And I wrote it down, and then when I revisited ideas for what to write my thesis on later, I already had a list of things that I was going to be very interested in. Sorry, catch my breath, I did run over here. Okay, I'm writing my thesis on political support for the exiled Stuart monarchy of England, Scotland, and Ireland that were kicked off the throne in the Glorious Revolution of 1688. I'm writing about a specific time period of their exile so that I'm able to sort of narrow down the sources that I'm looking at. I'm writing different chapters about the different styles of support, so like public, private, direct communications that they had directly with the exiled monarchs, with their subjects. So it's more of I think, a broader thesis in terms of like a big sort of concept of this political movement called Jacobitism. And what were the other things that I shared?
Things you learned along the way about your expectations, and also things you wish you knew about this time last year.
Okay. So along the way, you learn how important it is that since this is a long project, the most important thing that I think you need in order to be successful is organization from the very beginning of your process. If you're just simply looking at a secondary source and you're not sure you're going to be using it, still take notes on it, because if you want it 3 months later, you're going to want to know, you're going to want to be able to go back to it easily and find what you were looking for without having to reread the whole book. So basically planning ahead for yourself and making your future life easier is something that I think is very important whenever you're looking into different pieces of research that you're doing or broader themes, or if you just have an idea. I have a document open on my computer that just says running list of thoughts, and it's been open in my computer since August. And every time that I have a thought about my thesis, I just jot it down on my phone, or it's a Google Doc, so it's everywhere. And that way I can just, when I'm writing my chapters, look, oh, I knew I had something I wanted to say about this chapter, and then find it there. So basically, that's both like what I'm doing and also what I would recommend to start thinking about when you're thinking about this project. It is a very doable project. Like, don't let yourself get very stressed about it. It's really, the more thought you put into it and the more you're actively thinking about it, the easier it will be, because this is going to be something you're writing for a long time. You're going to want to be interested in it, and if the more you make it easier for yourself along the process, the more fun you'll have while doing it.
Janae, would you mind just sharing a bit about your experience?
Sure. So I'm Janae. I found my topic a little bit differently. I think to be completely honest, did not really think about my thesis until I stepped into class the first day. And I honestly think that that's a perfectly fine approach too. I think as history majors with concentrations, you're all developing your interests already. And so you have, at the very least, a very broad idea of what you're interested in already, and that's the perfect starting place. And I also think inevitably, even if you think you have a very specific topic in mind, it's going to change, and you should be very open to that. I guess what I'm writing about. Trying not to get too carried away here. So I'm writing about something that happened 3 centuries later than Adele, but mine is very public health themed. I'm looking at the TTT vaccine in the 1980s. So that was diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus. You may know that we now have a different version of the vaccine, and a large reason why is because of what happened in this like 5 to 7 year period that I'm looking at. So basically what I'm looking to do is analyze the anatomy of a public health scare. So how was information disseminated, what did the public do with it, and how did that response travel up in the ranks to the government at a legislative level. So that's what I'm writing about. And then what I'm learning.
Yeah, sort of what, and if there's just a bit of sort of things that, you know, that you, things that have worked for you, things that haven't, any kind of, and just sharing a little bit about your experience, things you wish you knew before.
Yeah, I think, like Adele was saying, organization is huge. But I think my biggest piece of advice is don't get stressed out about this process, because I know for me personally, I walked into the thesis process thinking that it was going to be like the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life, and like I was never going to be able to finish it, and walk into it thinking it's going to be fun, and pick a topic that you're passionate about and that you're interested in and that you can see yourself really getting into, because this is a year-long process. And you have incredible support from your advisors. You're in a very small group with your thesis seminar. So our class has 5 people, and we've all...
It's usually 6.
Okay,
12 next year,
6 people. But we've all gotten really tight. We've done, you know, editing outside of class for each other, and we all know each other's topics very well. And I think that's really helpful to just have sounding boards to bounce your ideas off of. And I think another piece of advice too is this piece of writing that you're doing is not like any other writing assignment that you've done before. So it's not a process where you can sit down and write it all in one go. And I think it's very common to feel like you're not making any progress because of that. So for me, what's been really helpful is to set aside like 2 to 3, like 1 to 2 hour long periods a week, where all I'm doing is working on my thesis. I'm reading, I'm taking notes, I'm writing a chapter, but you know that for that period of time, that's all you're working on. And before you know it, you're going to be, you know, working on your 3rd chapter. I think that's
Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So we're going to just talk about a few things going on this year. We have some specific offerings. I just want to reiterate, I think, what Adele and Janae shared is this is, you know, this is the first time for you, but the faculty advisors you'll have generally done this before. We break this into a series of doable pieces, and it's not an overnight type thing. And it's not, one thing is you might say, oh, it's 3 chapters, so it's kind of like writing 3 different term papers. It's not. It's kind of like writing 1 term paper to the 3rd power. It's a bit more exponentially bigger than just writing a group, and I think that that's what you both expressed in how your topics have evolved. We're sort of playing it by ear today. I also am going to talk about, I'm running the department's plan. We have some new money. We have $2,500 to give out in research funding. Some of it we want to award for anyone who thinks they might know what to do about research this summer. That's the handout that you have. It's a very simple application process. We're trying to keep this as streamlined as possible, and I'm happy to answer further questions about that. I know Joel and Nara wanted to talk about Professors Kay and Milan, and Nara Manish wanted to talk about a bit more of their experience in the process.
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree with everything that was said. I really like the idea of keeping a notes or a thoughts file as you go along, and sometimes you start with just a sentence and then you realize you're going to get a paragraph out of it, almost a paragraph that you can almost take fully and put it in a chapter somewhere. So it allows you to, it stresses the idea that you really are thinking about this. You're doing history, you're making history with this thesis in a way that you don't really get to do for most classes. It's your topic. You're pretty much in control of how you're going to go about doing it, with advice coming from your fellow students and your advisor. But it's a rare chance, and every time that we've asked or surveyed X majors and have graduated majors about what they really found exceptional about their history major, almost every time most of the answers are senior thesis. I thought I would hate it, I thought it would be horrible. It was a grind at some points, but in the end it was the favorite thing that I've done. So keep that in mind. Even when times get tough, and I'm glad that at least you understand that they can get tough, deadline arises and are quite ready, all those things, that's going to happen. But in the end, I can almost guarantee that you're going to feel that this is a really important project in your life, not just in your career as a student. So I will talk about both Nara Milanic, Professor Milanic, and I are doing new seminars for next year. Seminars that have never been tried before within the ambit of the senior thesis. Okay, so let me pass this around. There's a few people in here who will not be surprised to see what's in this, because they've taken other classes with me very close to this. But here, send this around this way. If you have extras, that's fine. Send this around this way. And since we're being recorded, when it finally gets around to you, I'm going to read through some of it, not all of it, but I'm going to read through some of it so that people who aren't here today can consult the video, and we'll get a sense of really what my new course will be. And as soon as I'm finished, Nara will take over and she will talk about her new course. So the name I've given this new thesis seminar is Focus on Historical Writing. And this will be given, as I said, for the first time in 2020-2021. Instead of having 6 students, it will have 12, so it will be a real seminar. But there will be plenty of chance for these 12 to interact. I can understand that it is wonderful to have a small group, but a larger group has its own benefits. Believe me, it has its own benefits. And that will not interfere in any way with you working closely with your colleagues in the seminar. So let me just read from it briefly. Students in this seminar will spend the opening semester finding and focusing in on their thesis topics, locating relevant primary sources, and beginning to research and write on their chosen subject. So this represents no change from what has long been the purpose of the first semester of the 2-semester history thesis project. Now, first, that's standard. What's new about this particular seminar is that students will spend 9 of the 14 weeks of the fall semester reading, analyzing, and discussing 9 exemplary pieces of historical writing. Our readings will cover widely different periods and topics, different historical approaches and styles, and different ways of meeting and overcoming problems that confront the writer of history. In reading them, we'll be focusing directly on the writing of history itself. Almost all of your reading, your history reading, has been on a particular subject, to memorize it or to use it in a paper. And you really haven't paid, what I've discovered, you haven't paid that much attention to the actual construction of the pieces that you're reading, the actual writing of the pieces that you're reading. And that's what this particular seminar will focus on. At every point, we will be asking, what does this piece set out to do? Does it succeed in its purpose? If so, what elements contribute to its success? And ultimately, how can we apply the positive lessons we learn from our readings to our own historical writing? We'll constantly be recycling these questions around the pieces that we're reading. For some weeks in the fall semester, there will be no reading assigned, and the entire seminar will be devoted to the particular